And so, Melissa, if you start the video, it's going to run for about 20 minutes, and then we'll stop and talk about what we're seeing.
I can now launch XD, and up pops this screen here, uh, which is now step 2, creating a new XD project. You're going to create an artboard that matches your particular mobile device. And to do that, under this first piece here, click on this down arrow. My phone is an iPhone X. If you're Android, you should pick that. If you're a different kind of iPhone, you should pick that as well. So I'm going to pick that artboard, and then it automatically creates this one artboard. I'm going to maximize this screen. Actually, not going to make it that big. Make it bigger so we can see what we're doing here. We're going to immediately go File, Save As. We're going to give this a title. I'm going to call this Todd's Own Words. It's important that you click on Cloud Document and not your computer. You want this to be a cloud document in order for this to seamlessly work on your mobile device. And click Save. Step 3, no, we're not going to create 8 artboards. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the fill color. We've already selected this artboard here. Click on the fill. I'm going to click on something that's a nice UNC Chapel Hill Tar Heel blue. You want to pick a pastel color, a light color, because we're going to be putting dark text on top of it. So I've selected the fill color. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this up here on the top to rename this. I'm going to call this cover. The next step is to duplicate this once. I've selected it again. I can go edit, duplicate, and notice the keyboard command here is Command D to duplicate. So I won't be coming back to this. I'll be using this again. The next step is to double click on this name right here, retype this so it says the word turn. Then I'm going to duplicate this again. This time I'm going to use Command D to duplicate it. And then if you'll notice on your printout, there's this instructions for how to zoom in and zoom out. You can use a 2-finger pinch. You can use this zoom magnifying glass. You can also do things like using Command 0 and Command 3 to zoom in and out. And so I'm going to zoom way out here. You can also use View, zoom out and in here. So zoom out is Command minus. So I'm going to do Command minus, Command minus. I've zoomed way out. I'm going to then click on term 1, and I'm going to drag it so that it's positioned underneath this first piece. Then I'm going to duplicate this 5 more times. So again, I can go edit, duplicate, or I could just hit Command D, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I've got a cover and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 term artboards. Step 4 is to design the cover artboard. I'm going to zoom in on these 2 artboards here by using the magnifying glass and just dragging a marquee around it and releasing it. So I'm going to zoom in on those 2. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the selection tool. I'm going to change this word from term to menu because that's what that artboard is going to do. I'm going to add a circle by clicking on the circle tool, holding down the shift key so that it makes a perfect circle and not an ellipse. And I'm going to drag a circle to be about those proportions. I can click the center tool here if I want that to be centered, or I can click on the selection tool and drag it around until I see that little line there that lets me know that things are centered. Now I'm going to add my headshot to that circle. I'm going to keep this window open over here in the background. And all I have to do is click, hold, and drag, and pop that in the circle. If you need to resize it, you can double click it and drag it around, but it automatically worked perfectly for me. So the next thing on the list is to reposition and resize the headshot as needed. Mine's fine. Now we're going to make this thing a component, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to click on the selection tool and we're going to drag till we get all the way around this, and then under object we can click on make a component, or we can go over here to the grid and click on this plus sign to make this thing a component. We know we've made it a component. We know we've made it a component when it switches from blue to green. And so I'm going to undo that again, and I'm going to say object, make a component, and watch what happens. The border around this object is going to switch from blue to green, and now I know that is a component. Okay, now we're going to click on the text tool to add some text. Here's the text tool. I'm going to line it up right there underneath this, and I'm just going to type in my name, Todd Taylor, my title, Pedagogical Evangelist, Adobe Creative Cloud, Enterprise Solutions, Higher Education, my cell phone number, and my email address. Now I'm going to select all this text by putting the text tool here and hitting Command A to select all of it. I don't want this to be gray, so I'm going to click on the fill. I'm going to change this to all black. That's better. I can edit this text in any way I want. I'm going to make my name a little bit bigger and bolder, so I'm going to click on bold. And I want all this text to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to select all and change it to 25. Now I'm going to click on the selection tool. I can move this text around. Notice it gives me a nice guideline, so I know that it's all centered. Change my mind. I don't want there to be a space between these two, so I'm going to delete that. So you can edit this text in any way you like. You can keep it the way it was, or you can change the font. I'm going to hit Command S to save, because it's always a good idea to do that. Our next step is to switch to the selection tool. Click off of the Artboard, open up this Finder window, and I'm going to click, hold, and drag this Adobe logo onto the screen. I'm going to justify it, and then I'm going to hold this corner, and I'm going to drag it till it's the size and place I want it to be. Again, be sure you're on the selection tool to make all of that happen. Step 5 is now to design the menu artboard. In order to do that, I'm going to click on the rectangle tool. I'm going to align these crosshairs with the top left-hand corner, and I'm going to drag the create a menu tool about those proportions. I'll release the mouse when I'm done. Next thing I'm going to do immediately while I'm still selecting that rectangle is I'm going to click off the border, because I don't want a black border around that space. The next piece is to click back on the selection tool, select this component here. I'm going to go edit copy, and then I'm going to click in the middle of this artboard and edit paste, and then I'm going to hold down the shift key and drag one corner of this until it's small enough so that I can fit it up here in this corner like that. After that, I'm going to, with the selection tool still activated, I'm going to click on this small Adobe logo. I'm going to drag it to the middle. I'm going to drop it. I'm going to hold down the shift key again and drag this one corner. Hold down the shift key, drag this corner to it's about that size, and then I can put this in the top left-hand corner. And then I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to drag this menu icon to the middle of the artboard. Again, I'm going to hold down the shift key, resize this so it's kind of tiny, and then put this in the dead center. And again, you can use all these guidelines to center and align things, or you can use this over here to click center, and then it's nice and centered. So now the menu looks like this. And I'm going to click on the selection tool, and I'm going to hold it to create a marquee just above this corner. Sorry, just right in the middle right here. And I'm going to be sure that I'm selecting all four of these things: the white rectangle, the Adobe logo, the menu icon, and my picture. And now I'm going to make this a component. So I go Object, Make a Component, and now everything switches to green all around that. All right, now that I have this sort of header turned into a component on the menu, I'm now going to switch to the selection I'm going to switch from the selection tool to the text tool. I'll click the text tool here. I've switched this font to 30 bold. I'm going to type in the longest term I have, which I believe is communicate. Then I'm going to switch to the selection tool. This should be selected in blue. I'm going to click on repeat grid. I'm going to repeat this grid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And I'm going to open this up, but I don't want this to repeat horizontally. And then I'm going to hold this, with the selection tool held, I'm going to hold this over this pink margin. And I'm just going to use this to spread things out in a way that I think looks good. I think that looks pretty good. When I'm done, I'm going to click on Ungroup the Grid. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select each of these terms individually and make them a component. Each a different component. So Object, Make a Component, and notice that the shortcut is Command K. So from now on, I'm just going to select this, Command K, Command K, Command K, Command K, and Command K. And again, you know it's a component once it switches from blue to green. Step 6 is to revise each term. So I'll switch to the text tool. The first term I like to have here is actually going to be compete. The second term is going to be create. The third term is going to be collaborate. The fourth term is going to be communicate. The fifth term is going to be contribute. And the final term is going to be capture. If I wanted to reposition these, I could select them all in a number of ways. One way is to switch to the selection tool and just put a marquee around all of them. Be sure you're not grabbing any of the other pieces, and you could move them around and align them and that kind of thing. But I like how they are. There we go. So there, I've realigned them. Step 7 is to edit each term on the artboard. And again, there's lots of different ways to zoom in and out. The real nice shortcut is there's zoom out here, but as the instruction sheet says, Command 0 will show you everything, and that's pretty slick to be able to do it that way. So I'm zoomed out to all the artboards. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select with the selection tool on. I'm going to copy this header, and I'm going to paste it to each of the term artboards. So edit, copy, or Command C, and then I'll just click in the middle of the artboard, and I can do edit, paste, or in this case, I'm just going to do Command V to paste, Command V to paste. Again, I'm clicking on the middle of the artboard, and notice that it knows to paste the thing in the right position, which is pretty helpful. So I've copied and pasted the header to each artboard, and now what I want to do is I want to put each of the terms on the appropriate artboard. So obviously this is term 1, that's going to go here. So I can do the same thing. I can just copy this, edit, copy, click on the middle of the artboard, hit paste, edit, paste, and it's going to copy and paste it there. I'm going to copy, paste, third one, copy on term 3, paste, fourth one, copy, paste, term 4, fifth one, copy, paste, term 5, sixth one, copy, paste, term 6, right? Now, obviously, they're in the wrong vertical alignment. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this one up the way I want it to be. I want it to be up towards the top here. So I click this one. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm just going to click on each of these terms. And then up here in the top right-hand corner is this Align Top command. So what it's going to do is when I click it, it's going to align all of these to the first one in the selection. So now they're all aligned perfectly all the way across. If I want, and I want to center these now, and I could drag them and center them, but that's a little bit too manual. I can actually click on them again, and then over here is the center button. Click, center, click, center, select, center, select, center, select, center. All right. So step 8 is to add definition copy to each of the term artboards. And this is where that earlier text file comes in handy. Now, if this process doesn't work perfectly, just be patient. At the end, we'll show you another way to do it. But if everything went smoothly, saving this as the right format of a text file, this should be pretty slick. So the first thing to do under step 8 is switch to the text tool. And now we're going to create a text box over here in the first artboard that's shaped about like this. And so you're just dragging and holding. And then in the text box, we just want to type in some gibberish, a couple spaces. Now, to me, I don't want that text to be that big, so I'm going to edit, select all, which is Command A. And I'm going to change this to 18 point and regular font. Okay. Now that I've got that text box the way I want, I'm going to repeat this a bunch of times so that I don't have to repeat what I just did. So I'm switching to the selection tool. I've got this first text box selected. I'm going to go over here to click on Repeat Grid. It's now turns to green, and we have these handles here. I'm going to drag this handle to the right until I get 6 versions of that text box. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, and that is 6. So I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 versions of that text box. Now I'm going to put this the cursor, the selection tool cursor, right between these things, and I'm not clicking on anything yet until I get a pink margin. And then once I have that pink margin highlighted, I'm going to click and hold, and I'm just going to drag this to the right until these get more or less evenly spaced. They're not going to be perfect, but now I've got each of these text blocks actually on top of one of these artboards, and then I'm going to release it. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the text file onto that first box. So this is the trickiest part of all this. So here are my terms. I've already typed in all this copy, and I've got it formatted in that special text way. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag it. Click, hold, and drag it to this first box, and I'm going to release it. And notice what's happened. It's populated that text all the way across, right? Next thing to do is on my Mac is to hit the Escape key. And then I'm going to click on Ungroup the Grid. Now, if I want to, I can align all of these text boxes to the top. And then I can individually click on all of them and align these text boxes to the center. You can also manually drag these if you wanted to. I like using the center function just so I know that it's symmetrical. Now, if your text boxes if you have a lot of text here, you may need to drag this box out longer so that you can see everything, but you probably don't have that much text. Okay, so now we have our artboards looking exactly the way we want them. Now we want to define or design the way that these interact, the way that these link or hyperlink together. And so to do that, we're going to switch from design mode to prototype mode. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hold down the shift key and we're going to click all of these white boxes at the header of each of these artboards. And then we're going to click this button over here on the right that says fix position when scrolling. And then we're going to go up to object and arrange and say bring to front. Next thing we're going to do is we're just going to click off onto the workspace, not on top of any artboard. And we're going to link each of these terms in the menu to its proper artboard. So we're going to click on compete, which is term 1, and we see this blue little arrow pop up. All we have to do is drag this down to the middle of this artboard and release. Same thing for the second term, third term, the third artboard, the fourth to the fourth, the fifth to term 5, and the sixth to this. And so what this is doing is that when you click on compete, the word compete, or you tap on it, there will be this transition that will actually be a dissolve that will go to these different artboards. The next action we need to program is for each of these menu headers to click back to this menu. So when you click on anywhere in this white rectangle, it will bring you back to the menu. So we need to program all of those interactions. So click on each artboard and now drag them back to the menu. And then we want, when we click on this first artboard, we want it automatically to go to the menu. And then when we click on the top of this artboard up here, we want this to go back to the information screen. And so we've programmed all of those different interactions and all those different links. And we can now preview what this looks like. Before we preview it though, however, we want to make sure that this is our home page. And so right now, you see this little home icon is on the menu. We want to use the selection tool under prototype mode, click on the cover, and then click this little gray button. So that is going to be the home page, the first thing that opens up when we are previewing or when we're actually running the app. So we can now preview the app by clicking this plus button over here, and then we can test all the interactions to make sure that they are all working the way they're supposed to work. And so we're testing each one of them to make sure they all work. And then we click on this one, it jumps us back to the beginning. So that's all good. Once we've tested the preview, we want to be sure again to save this as often as we can. It's already been saved, Control Save. And then it's time to share. So there's lots of different ways to share this. When you save this project initially to the cloud, now if you go into XD on your mobile application, you should be able to open up this mobile application there and interact with it on your phone. If you wanted to send a link to me or your manager or to somebody so that they could preview this on a laptop, the way to do that here is under Share. There's this button here to create a link. It takes a second to process. And so once you've created this link, you can just click on this little link button and it's copied the link, and then you can go into email or anything you want to use and just click on new, and you can send me a link, T Taylor. I'm just going to paste that link down now, and there it is. We've only just scratched the surface with XD, and you're probably wondering why we did some things a certain way. We made things a component so that they're easy to later revise. When I'm in design mode, let's say I want to change this word from create to creativity. When I select it, once I've made it a component, I retype in creativity, it automatically also changes it down here. Let's say I don't want this black and white headshot. I want a color headshot. If I now drag this color headshot and replace this, look what happens. It replaces it in all of these other places where this is a component. And so that's why we made these things a component. So here endeth the lesson. Thank you very much for listening. I hope this inspires you to find out more, not only about XD, but your own terminology and vocabulary.
Oh, that's it. I needed to do that. Now I'm back on screen.
There you are. Yes.
Thanks everyone for indulging that 20 minutes of instruction. What you see me doing there is trying to simplify the universe into just a basic menu. In this case, it was text. It wasn't anything complicated or fancy, so that the novice or the beginner can get a sense of how this kind of design works. You create a cover, you create a menu. The menu feeds into each of the different sub pieces or the nodes, and then there's a menu interaction to go back. Obviously, there are tons of things to learn here and lots to explain. But what I try to do is simplify the universe to the point where they can create any basic sort of interaction that they have the time and the patience to compose. And we did this in the artboard in the space of an iPhone screen, but you could, in the original pick, and I've done this many times, an artboard that is the shape of a web page, so that you're prototyping a web page nodal structure. I'm so pleased, and I promise you, we didn't set this up ahead of time from Melissa, that she says there are increasingly people who are doing their presentation decks in XD, and I know professional design companies who are now doing everything in XD, because in the words of my friend who used to work in finance, I do everything in PowerPoint because it's going to end up in PowerPoint anyway. So a design firm that is presenting on experience design, they might as well just do it all in XD anyway, and that becomes their presentation tool. It's incredibly versatile. In fact, the handout that accompanies this, it takes you through all the steps and even some footnotes that we didn't get to, I created in XD. I didn't create that in a word processing document or InDesign. I created that in XD because I found it easy to think and operate that way. Interestingly enough, I was just on a call with a CIO from a university right before this webinar, where he was talking about his memories of first-year college writing and how he can't remember a single paper that he ever wrote. If you were to take in a class from religious studies to whatever, to first-year writing to biology, if you were to take that static, overdone research assignment, maybe as represented today, in the form of a problem solution paper, and it becomes a problem. In this case, the problem was getting a job, and the solution is to create a different kind of digital asset to represent who you are, to distinguish yourself. It's different than people with other capabilities in this market. If a student were to have that experience, and let's think about the student experience in that kind of class in the general education curriculum, what's the likelihood that they'll never forget that experience, even if they don't become a professional designer? And so that's what we're going for. That's why we took this somewhat indulgent tool of XD. I hope you get in there and play around. Well, I have just a minute or two. Any questions that we have come up so far, or any questions anyone would like to quickly in the last minute throw up in the chat pod?
Yeah,
Melissa?
Todd, I've got one. So Emily is asking let's get your opinion on this. What's the best way to share the product with someone who doesn't actually have XD?
Right. So we didn't get to that step. We kind of ran out of time. But basically, there's a share button. There's a share button in every application now that creates a URL. And so you just create a link and you send anyone that link and they can open it up and they can see the product. What is so powerful about this is I've designed this so that the student is designing this for their own mobile device, because the big moment is when they hold out their cell phone, and they may have been programming and designing on a laptop, but through Creative Cloud, through the Creative Cloud account, this is synchronized so that when they open XD on their phone, there's their project and they can open it up and literally manipulate this in that space. And so that's the moment where, it's a little bit tedious and a little bit tiresome to get through all this. But then when on their own phone, they see themselves impacting that space, that's when things get to be so exciting and really come together. So this exercise is so that they can view it on their own cell phone. But the ecumenical way to look at these things, the universal way, is you could just create a URL, which is exactly what I showed when we were looking at Valentina's webpage. And so, thanks everyone so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. Download the sheet, and you can actually hand this exercise over to your students or follow those instructions and modify it yourself. The full length video is also available online in the URL in that sheet. And again, thank you, Melissa, so much, and thanks everyone for being with us today.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Appreciate you. Todd, appreciate you. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. Click the link in the description below to explore more free online professional development, and click the link on screen to subscribe to the channel for more videos.